It's going. All right. It's already up to 999 kilobytes. All right. So first things first, right? I'm going to type in Grasshopper. Let's bring that up. Again, as this is just waiting for this, it's sort of dead air time while I wait for something to load. All right, we're just talking about it a week from today. For some of you who are really on the cusp of laser cutting, go ahead, sign up for a time between now and Wednesday. Laser cut it. Even if you bring in your pieces, you haven't even tried to assemble it. If you bring them in on Wednesday, you'll get some extra credit. I'd like for everybody to try to get these things done between now and not next Wednesday, but the following, or not next one Monday, right? Like after winter, or not after Nevada Day, but the first Monday, I think, of November, right? So I'll go ahead and lay that out in Canvas when I upload this video as a reminder. But I'll probably ask for you to upload a few photos, and that way I can sort of double check and I have something to grade on Canvas. But what I'm expecting is for you to bring physical things to the classroom. They might look really nice. They might sort of look halfway nice at the very beginning, and then by the end they look awful. Or they might just be a complete failure. But if you just say, well, I cut things out, but I didn't bring them in. Like, no, you got to bring them in. Like, I want to see this. Like, the conversation I want to have is, then if you haven't put it together yet, let's put it together right now, right? Okay, so I just want to have that conversation. And we'll start that conversation a week from today. Most of them will be the following Monday. All right. So, again, you guys have been developing your components, right? And you've been using maybe a planar surface or something. I just made a sort of planar surface the other day for the demonstration. But first things first, we're making a grid shell, right? So I want some sort of doubly curved geometry. And so your first task is to open up this shell surface classification file. And I'll just move it over to the left here. Maybe. There we are. And I'll open up that perspective viewport. And again, I'll just quickly go over some of these basics. But what it's doing is it's creating this sort of sine, cosine wave scape. And really all you guys have to do is sort of position wherever you want your own patch to be, right? All I have to do is adjust these two things. It'll be the same size. Everybody's will have the same sort of footprint when you look at it in top view, all right? If you do that. Why? Because I want to make sure that all the pieces you get out of this thing are actually fit on the laser cutter bed. That's why. It's that simple. That's one logistic I can figure out for you, understand you, and I don't mind doing it. So when I'm ready to actually, let's say this is the surface I want, I look at it and go, oh man, that's perfect. Oh, it'll never get any better than that. Oh my goodness. That is a masterpiece. I'm going to bake this into Rhino. Oh, sorry, right click, bake. I'll bake that on the default layer in my case. I'm going to go ahead and close Grasshopper for the time being. For whatever reason, I need to reload Parallels. I was going to do that this morning. I forgot. I got sidetracked with about 30 other tasks. But I did clean my office, which was much needed. So, in addition to all the busy work I did. Let's see. So here we go. Now we have a surface, right? So this is going to take the place of your planar surface that you're just, playing around with, right? Again, these Grasshopper recipes, they're really resilient. What's the recipe? What's the one ingredient it needs? A surface, right? You can populate any damn surface you want. N number of times in the U's, N number of times in the V's. All you have to do is plug in any surface, right? All right, so this will be your new surface. That's mine, and you guys need to open up that Grasshopper file, bake one of your own in, and use it, all right? That said, let me just bring Grasshopper back up again. I'm going to go ahead and close this file. That's all. That's all I gave you that file for, is to get your own shell geometry. This is kind of dome. It's sort of doubly curved, but in the same direction. The U's and the V's are making sort of U shapes in section, and the same going down, right? Sort of hugging the ground. There are others, when you move it around, start to create saddle shapes. So U's go in one direction and V's are going in the opposite direction, right? Do you like parabolic hyperboloids or do you like hyperbolic paraboloids? That's really the kind of question here. No? You guys don't remember those? I mean, it's intuitively obvious to even the most casual observer, right? Okay. All right, so really quickly, I'm just going to bring up the next file I gave you, and that is, I believe, this one. This one was at the very end. Yeah, because it has, the reason I know that is because I can go all the way to the very right. Not only do I have the curves that are going to laser cut, but I also have a text tag widget, right? So I know that this thing's going to produce labels for me. All right, so I go all the way back to the left. Here we go. Right click, set one surface. I'll select that bad boy, and there it is. Now it's kind of in the way of everything, so I'm just going to move it over here. Yeah. Actually, I'll move it into the negative quadrant. Rhino likes to populate things in that sort of positive x, positive y quadrant of the Cartesian coordinate system, that grid. So I'm just going to move this out over here so it's kind of out of the way. All right. Now, you'll all get this when you do this, right? Now, it's not lost on me that you all are not doing two-sided pyramids, right? Yeah, we've had that conversation several times already, right? And so, honestly, right, this will look familiar to you. Faces, edges, vertices, right, of all those checkers. From here all the way to here, right? That's for you to sort of copy and paste. You can take this recipe out, copy and paste yours in, reconnect things back up the way you need to, right? You can be a little chintzy sometimes, so if you have problems, let me know, right? But you still should have the old one you can reference back to, right? Sort of test your attention to detail sometimes. So yeah, this is the recipe, right? And then what we're doing is we're taking whatever triangular quad surfaces that we're creating, right, as part of our shading components, and we're joining them together, right? Anything that can be joined as a polysurface will be, right? And then we unroll it. So we unroll each of those polysurfaces. Now, if you have individual pieces that can't be joined together, like they only meet at like a tip, right, rather than an edge, or they don't meet up at all, right, you might actually have to make a copy of this, right, and take the first set and unroll those, and then take the second set and unroll those in another grid. Right? All right. So if you have issues where you're looking at this and you're going, well, each cell has actually two sort of separate components that can't be joined together, right? You might start to get a bunch of redundant things here, like things overlapping, which you don't want, right? So that's one way to get around that. But if you have any problems, again, let me know sooner rather than later. That's why I want you to go through the motions sooner rather than later. Don't wait around. Just get it done. All right. And then last but not least, we're moving all of these things. These things actually all stack up at the 0, 0, 0 point. You don't believe me, I'll turn the preview back on. There they all are. In this case, all 225 of them, because I'm dividing things 15 by 15, right? But now I'm just sort of laying them all out in a grid, right? So I'm just going to turn that preview off. Not only do I have those surfaces, but I have really all I want. All the laser cutter wants, it doesn't want surface, right? Laser cutter wants a path to, it's like a printer, right? It just wants to trace lines and curves and zap things with laser beams, which is pretty cool, right? Yeah. So really, all I need are the edges around, called naked edges, and then all the edges on the inside, right? Interior edges. All right. It's important to keep those differentiated, right? You're going to put those on different layers because the things that you're going to score, you don't actually want to through cut. I mean, that saves you a lot of time. Imagine, for instance, having, doubling the amount of joints you have that you have to glue. It's going to triple the amount of time it takes you, right? Now think about this not you at your desk with chipboard and glue, but think about this with a construction crew in a huge, booming, expensive metropolis with limited space, and people that, rightfully get paid a living wage, hopefully, and benefits, and medical care, and things like that. Your labor costs will go up the roof if you start doubling or tripling them, right? That's where a lot of the money comes from when it comes to constructing these things, right? So you don't want cost overruns. You definitely don't want a budget or a time overrun, like the Spear down the street. That thing was overdue by like a year and a half. It cost them a fortune, like over $2 billion to finish that thing. Now I think that's a prototype they've learned from, and they're going to replicate or do something similar in London and some other places now. Although it's a shame because that seems uniquely Las Vegas right now. But again, that's where the money is, right? So if I can solve as much as I can here with precision, I've saved myself probably a lot more time fumbling around with my fingers, and I have a third hand. It's like those things, the alligator clips, where you're soldering or things together, right? You can sort of keep things together and then keep your hands free with the solder and the iron. Or glue or whatever it is, right? You guys have like intricate sort of, instruments to help you put together like models, like the chopper and the miter box and no? Yeah? Some of you do, right? For like precision, really good models. Anyway. Okay, so from here on out, I'm ready to actually, look at this. I have text, I have the text tags. Look at this, this one starts 1 and 1, and this is 1 and 2, and this is 1, 3, and this is 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, and the next row over is 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, right? So all these are going to be labeled. Yeah, perfect. Now, do I really want 15 by 15 matrix? That's an awful lot of things, right? Think about it. 10 by 10, that's 100 cells. I go up to 15 by 15, I've more than doubled the amount of cells, 225. So what I would recommend is you stick somewhere between 8 by 8. If you have something very complicated, you maybe want a larger cell and fewer, but you're really trying to work out the craft of lots of intricate folds, go 8 by 8. If you have something relatively simple, you think repetition is going to help, go as big as 12 by 12, but no bigger than that. I'd highly recommend sticking 8 by 8, 10 by 10, 12 by 12, 9 by 9, 11 by 11, whatever you want, but I would highly recommend sort of thinking about, not making it. We're all human, right? So we can't just wave a magic wand yet and have these things made for us. So again, think in terms of quality, if you have to, right, over quantity. All right. So first things first. Before I do anything else, this is the recipe. I can change this stuff. Let's change this to 10 by 10. All right. Yeah, and so the first one's going to be 1, 1. The last one will probably be 10, 10. There we go. Yeah, fantastic. That makes me so happy I can almost cry. All right, so a couple of things here, right? You might correct me later. I don't know. But I'm going to assume that the red layer is cut and the blue layer is scored. Right? And so what I'm going to do, and I could be completely wrong here. You'll have to look at that template. But I'm actually going to label this score. I'm going to label this through cut. Oh, come on. Here we go. Cut. I'll move this stupid thing out of the way. I actually want the scores to be cut first, so I'm going to move that layer up, right? And yeah, right? It's really important, right? You want to score everything first while everything's still frozen in place. Before you start cutting all the individual components, they have a tendency maybe to even shift after they're sort of freed up from the larger sheet, right? That becomes really important when you're going through thicker materials with an actual physical force, like a router bit or a water jet or something like that. But laser cutting, it still applies, right? So think about these step by step. If you start to choreograph this stuff out, I'm going to score everything first and then do the through cuts at the very end, right? And that way, if something shifts during those through cuts, at least all the scores are still on there instead of scoring, something wrong, right? We're scoring nothing if a piece shifts around on us. All right, so let's see here. Score. I'm going to make that the active layer. Let's find those interior. Yep, those are the interior edges. I can select this widget. It turns green. Their preview in Rhino turns green. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm going to right-click, bake. I'm going to bake it onto the score layer. Okay. Now, same with the tags, right? The text tags. But really quickly, I'll just go ahead and take these. I'm going to bake these, right? Those are the through cuts. I'll bake those on the cut layer. All right, last but not least, I'm going to take these text tags. Those text tags, right? They look kind of weird. They're not necessarily the right font. They're not necessarily the right size. But I'm going to bake them into Rhino anyway. And then if you'll remember the other day I showed how you can sort of change them all. I'll show that again here in a minute. I'll put those on the score layer and hit OK. All right. Bye-bye, Grasshopper. I'm going to go ahead and set this to technical just so I can see the actual line works. It's still not showing actual lines. Oh, come on. All right, I'll just leave Grasshopper on so you can still see that they're there. That's just annoying. Okay, now, I just baked in a bunch of text. You can see that it's completely bereft of any formatting that I had, right? Like the size, the fonts, typeface, whatever it's all just I think it's like Myriad or whatever it is, that lame font that Word uses by default. Ugh. All right, so I'm going to say cell, S-E-L, in Rhino. I'm going to go ahead and minimize Grasshopper so it's out of the way, right? That's short for select. Now you can see I can select everything, cell all. I could say cell PTS for points, or SRF for surfaces, or whatever, but I can say cell text. All right, there's 100 text items added to selection. And now, over here in the layers box, if I look at this little color wheel called properties, it's going to show me the properties of this text. Okay. Now, right now, it's just showing me the generic properties that it shows for anything that I have selected, right? So if I go down to, it's saying this is text. There's text properties I can set. I can go down to the text items, right? And now I can say, okay, what's the style? What's the height or the size, right? What font to use? Yeah. All right. Yay! All right. So single line font, RHN Architect. SLF RHN Architect. Yeah. All right. Now you notice how all of these are now just single lines, right? That's really important. If you look at it and go, well, it's just a couple of extra lines. It's just scoring. But if you do that over and over and over again, right, it starts to add up, right? You start to actually double your time. Yeah.
I'm sure everyone here is running Rhino 7, but if you are running Rhino 6 or earlier, they don't have that.
They don't have that font. Ask me, and I can just try to isolate that font to my system, and I can upload it as a download. You can install it on your system, right? But this is totally worth it if you, yeah. Good, thank you, JR. That's very helpful to know. 0.03 is about 32nd of an inch, maybe. Okay, 0.01 for the height. Okay, there they are. You've seen also the Grasshopper preview, so that's why it looks like there's sort of double sort of text there. So now my components are ready to lay out, right? And if I really wanted to, I could draw that box, 32 by 18 box, or I can copy and paste these or import them into the template file that you can download from Kyle on the SimLab, the fab, digital fabrication website, right? DigFab. All right, I'm just going to quickly make my own here. What am I doing? Oh, ortho. Yeah, that usually helps. One thing you're noticing probably is, well, you might notice, I don't know if you can still see my, here, let me turn off this grid. So you can see that the bounds of my 18 by 32 I'm actually going to have to move these things around and reposition them to fit on the 18 by 32. So this is automatically, I know it's going to take up pretty much one 18 by 32 sheet. Right. Yeah. Of chipboard, one ply chipboard. Let's see. Oh, it's interesting. That's weird. Like it showed up for a minute, but then disappeared. Oy, all right. Shall we do the ribs next? Yeah, I think so, right? Excellent. All right. Really quickly, one other thing that I haven't mentioned yet, but later on, we'll go take a look at these files while you're just laser cutting and trying to dial things in. We'll use this file and we'll start to make our own sort of assembly instructions, right? Instead of drawings, we sort of talk about how you take each of these pieces and where they all go, right? A la Lego or IKEA or something like that. And so one of the things you'll want to do is maybe save your Grasshopper file with the parameters you're using. Or you could always, take the three-dimensional version and bake these components in as well. That's what I'm going to do really quickly. I'm just going to bake these in as well, so that I have a 3D model of this stuff. There's my Grasshopper. I've already baked these in for laser cutting. But now I'm just going to take these, right? These are the poly surfaces that I joined together, right? You can see that they're highlighted green. Those are the shading components before I unroll them. Yeah. So there they are, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll just say, okay, here's while I'm thinking about this, right? It helps, layer management kind of helps sometimes, right? So in the default layer, I'm going to change that name to grid shell surface. Over here in this purple layer called layer 02, I'm going to rename that shading components. And over here in layer 04, which happens to be green, I'm going to call that structural ribs or something like that, right? Okay, so shading components. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on this brep join widget, bake those in. And what did I just call that? I think I just called that shading components. There we are. Okay. All right. Now when I turn off Grasshopper, they're still there, right? I have a three-dimensional static version of them, right? Yeah. Right, so let's do the ribs now. The ribs we're not going to use Grasshopper on. We'll use this Rhino script instead. Right? So we'll go back in time, the mid-aughts. Oh man, can't tell you. Brings back so many memories. Pre-Grasshopper, where you actually had to instead of dragging nodes around and things like that, you actually had to learn how to write scripts, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Tools Pull Down, right? Rhino Script, Edit. I'm going to hold my cursor there so you get a good shot of where I'm pointing at. Tools Pull Down, Rhino Script, Edit. That brings up the Rhino Script, the script editor. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. All right, you can see right here that I've already opened up the last file I ran was surface to grid shell 01.rvb, Rhino Visual Basic. Go ahead and close that, okay? You can see that there might be a template already here if you wanted to write your own. Good old option explicit. Here we can call the main sub, in sub. You can actually add more sub functions if you'd like, if you're really into that kind of stuff. But what you're going to do is you're going to go File, Open, and you're going to open up that .rvb file that I gave you, right? So let's see, 10/23/2023. There we are. Okay. You can see my buddy, Andrew Cudless, is the one that wrote this. It works still somehow, without too many goofy oddities. And so what I'm going to do then, once I see this, I'm going to hit the green triangle, the sort of play button, if you remember old VCRs and DVD players. All right, when I do that, the editor is going to disappear. It's going to run and execute that script. The first part of the script is asking me for ingredients. Select a surface to populate with tiles. Okay, there it is. Now it's going to ask me for some parameters, right? So instead of having sliders or a little notepad I can change the number in, it's going to ask me. It's called procedural modeling. So in this case, how many tiles did I make in my Grasshopper file? I went 10 by 10, didn't I? Yeah. So by default, you'll see this is already set to 10 by 10. If you, again, remember, look at that, count them. The parameters used in Grasshopper you need to use here as well. Otherwise, you're going to have, things aren't going to match up, right? So 10, 10. All right, the height for the strip, that's referring to the structural depth of these ribs, right? So how much, if I take all the U's and V curves along this thing, dividing this thing up 10 times and 10 times, how much do I offset them in order to get the bottom of each sort of structural rib, right? We have the top and the surface. So in this case, I'm going to say, I recommend somewhere in the neighborhood of 3/4 of an inch. Okay? So I'm going to type in 0.75. If you go much smaller than that, I've seen people do 0.5, and they must have a lot of patience, more patience than I do. If you go smaller than 0.5, this one-ply chipboard has a tendency to sort of kink and rip and tear, right? But I always steer clear. I always go up to maybe 3/4 of an inch, okay? 1 inch looks a little goofy, but I've seen it done well. Just sort of, again, you're trying to sort of make something that looks aesthetically not too clunky, but at the same time actually performs with that, Again, we're building it. So, if it can't even withstand its own tension inside, then it certainly wouldn't, take water and snow loads, right? All right, if we deployed this up in Reno, Lake Tahoe or something. So enter the height of the strip, 0.75. Okay. Enter the x distance between unrolled strips. Right. So it's going to populate this thing with 3-dimensional ribs, and it's also going to take each of those 3-dimensional ribs and unroll them out on the xy plane for us. Right. So it's asking us, as it unrolls these, how much spacing do we want between this rib and the next rib, and the next rib, and the next rib as it lays them out? And the next question is going to ask is, after I've done the U's, how far up and wide do you want me to start the V's, right, with the same spacing in between? So I'm just going to pick an obnoxiously larger number than I probably need, just to try to avoid some overlaps here. I'll go with 20 inches, and I'll go with 40 inches. Enter material thickness, very important, right? It's going to populate all of these with notches. Those notches are essentially how the materials slide together. Knowing that material thickness is really critical. If you get your chipboard, I recommend one-ply chipboard. You can always look at what it says nominally on the packaging. Right? It might be packaged as it's 1/32 of an inch, or 0.030, even though 32nd of an inch is 0.03125 or whatever it is, right? You can actually take it in there and try to see if Kyle has a micrometer, right, like digital calipers, and try to measure it. What I recommend doing, I think usually somebody ends up dialing these things in. You can start with 0.030 if that's what you have, right? Like that's close, and see if that works. Or you could make a few little notches, just in a little rectangle, and another couple of notches, each one just slightly bigger and slightly larger than 0.030, right? Laser cut those. Kyle said it'll let you test that if they're not busy, right? And then put them together and try to figure out which one's best, and then use that guide, right? So there's lots of different ways to sort of dial in those tolerances if you want. All right, so I'm going to say 0.03. All right. And then this is the point where you go get a cup of coffee and watch Rhino do all your work for you, right? There it is. Okay. So it executed out. Now, what's interesting here, I think, is you can see cell last, 15 curves, 1 polysurface, 1 text added to selection. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I'm not being very clear. I'm turning off that grid shell layer. You can see that it's giving me a U strips and a V strips layer, right? And those correspond to, right, those ribs, those 3-dimensional ribs. They're only paper thin, right? They have no thickness to them. They haven't been offset in any way to sort of make them more materially accurate, right? But there they are. I promise you they're over here as well. I just need to sort of figure out how to get them all to show up. 15 curves, and I don't know why there's only 15 curves. There they are. Oh. It's like at a certain size they appear. I don't understand why. It's really starting to make me upset. 2 texts, all right. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and turn off the cut and score layer for the time being. So I can just get these ribs that are freshly made. And I'm just going to go to top view. It would be easier to sort of select things there. I know that they started in the top, or in the top left quadrant here with the 0, 0 point. So I'm just going to sort of drag and try to find everything here. You guys should be able to see this just fine. Is any of you trying this right now, even? Again, I'm sort of stuck here. For whatever reason, my build of Windows is not working with my video card again. And that's really annoying. Let's go with maybe pen. Let's see if I can just get these lines to show up. Ah, there they are. Okay. All right. So you can see what it gave me. I'll just look at one of these ribs in respectively. So there's rib in the V direction, rib 5. There it is. And you'll see that it has these red notches, right? Those are, those will basically cut out your notches for you. If you want that green, I would just put that on the score layer, and you can score this thing just to make it a little more flexible, right? So as it starts to bend in its planar direction, right? It's planar normal direction. It has a little more give. Not necessary, but some people like to do that. It's there. It does it for you there. As a way to sort of fold. So here's the thing, right? Like sometimes when you take something that's a little thicker and you start to bend it, it has a tendency to crease. Here you can begin to suggest where it's going to crease. It's like a control joint in a floor, right? You know the concrete's eventually going to crack. Where do I want it to crack? Right here, where I put a control joint, weaken it, right? Same with side. That's why we have sidewalks with control joints. Yeah. Sometimes it actually works. Although you would never know of walking down Maryland Parkway. The sidewalk is like crap, isn't it? It's like terrible. All right. So from here, I'm ready to sort of lay these things out. Oh, sorry. I think you can see them. There's all the V's. I would simply move all of these out of the way, off to the side, and sort of arrange them in those 18 by 32 boxes, right? Get them ready to laser cut. All right. And voila. Ta-da. Now I have both all the laser cut stuff and the 3D model sort of baked into Rhino. So I have my original surface, sort of master geometry. Then I have it broken up into ribs. And then I also have each cell between the ribs populated with a shading component. So this is what mine should look like in my case. See, you weren't that far away. You're really close. Excruciatingly close. Try it out, right? Try it out. Even if you're thinking, I'm going to laser cut sometime next week, go now. Sign up for laser cutting time next week. Go ahead and get on that schedule. Pick and choose your time. So that, and then you have a deadline to work towards. He explained you do have to, it does take a little bit of money. I think they charge by the hour, half hour, right? For a whole hour?
No,
$5 for half hour?
Yeah.
So $10 an hour? Okay. Yeah. So, I would say if you can sort of figure this stuff out, sign up for half an hour.
I don't think it should take that long. I mean, like, how big's the actual model we're doing? Is it that?
I passed it around the other day.
This right here.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I think like down.
So I would say start with half an hour. And I think you use your Rebel card or whatever. Like
Yeah,
your
Rebel card.
student ID. Is that just your student
Yeah, student ID.
I just say student ID. I got here, everybody called them rebel cards. Like, what's that? Like, but then they also like, so they want you like get a rebel credit card. 20% discount. All right, so anyway, yeah, that's the deal. I think there's ways to charge that card up online or through your bank or whatever, but that's how we've always done it, I guess. And they don't want to like charge you an arm and a leg. They're not really there to sort of kind of price gouge you or whatever. But they do have to sort of replace optics from time to time. So they're just trying to cover their overhead. Let's see. We have 2 of them in there, so it shouldn't be an issue now to like sort of back up. It should actually run really efficiently. Fingers crossed. All right. Okay. It is now 10:48. I think I've gone through the process good enough for you guys, right? So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. I'll get this thing uploaded. I'll start to craft that page in Canvas so you guys can remember what was said today. It's work time for the rest of the class time. And here, like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, I should be freed up. I can float around if anybody has any questions or needs anything from me, okay? All right. I don't think I'm going to be on campus tomorrow morning. There's this tech CLT guy I'm supposed to be meeting, having coffee with. But then I have to be on campus in the afternoon for some stupid meeting. So I'll be in and out, so I'll be checking my email. Yeah, my director wants to meet. They want to talk about Art Walk, and like Art Walk is like a week away, and it's like, now you want to talk about Art Walk? Like, where were you like 3 months ago, dude? Like, no, whatever. It's not my job to make the dean look good. All right, so anyway, but I'll come in for a meeting at 1. So I'll be in and out. You might see me around. If so, I'm probably passing from one place to the next. But you know, if you need anything from me, be in touch via email. I'm usually pretty good about staying in touch. If you bug me over Nevada Day, well, you know, I might be out in the wilderness hiking around, or I might be sitting on the couch watching Netflix or something, eating fudge or cookies. I like cookies. Cookies sound good. Get some cookies. Sound delicious. Anyway, I was still recording. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off.